Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
So what if being a mankind idiot? One nation controlled by the media. Information age of hysteria. It's going out to idiot America.
Top of the morning to you. Something a little bit weird happened to me this morning. Not weird in the sort of spooky sense, but just weird in that kind of aligning of the planet sense, when two things come along apparently unrelated, but they conspire to make or to create something a little bit more illuminating. So first thing, I had a quick look in the box of trolls to see what they were up to this morning, bless them. And I learned that some of Hillary Clinton's key allies are now being accused, I kid you not, of abducting Madeleine McCann. Okay, that's out there today. I would retweet the link, but part of me thinks sometimes you really do have to deny people the oxygen of publicity. And then I read about the number of fake news stories going viral. So, pro-Trump people on Twitter claiming that Hillary Clinton's key allies actually personally, physically abducted Madeleine McCann. Okay, you think I'm lying now, don't you? So I'm going to have to retweet the lunatic in order to show you that I'm not making this up. And he's not. Do you think I'm lying, or do you recognise that we now live in a world where that is plausible? Right? That's how far we've gone down the rabbit hole. That is how far post-truth we've gone. She's so awful. Her guys, they abducted Madeleine McCann. And this is a British person. This is... Okay, and then I read that Facebook is under pressure to address fake news on its site after, and these are probably, in all the frightening words that we've heard in this frightening of years, the craziest year of all, 2016. It's going to be like Halley's Comet of news. Here is the line that historians of the future will finally settle upon when they seek to understand how we have taken such collective leave of our senses this year. Okay, this is the line right here. Facebook is under pressure to address fake news on its site. Not that bit, this bit. After researchers found that misleading stories and conspiracy theories were far more likely to go viral than fact-based reporting. Just think about that for a minute. Suddenly everything makes sense, doesn't it? Misleading stories and conspiracy theories, which we could loosely describe, I suppose, as lies. Misleading stories and conspiracy theories are far more likely to go viral than fact-based reporting. Now, speaking as someone whose fact-based reporting goes viral pretty much every day at the moment, I find that absolutely credible, completely believable, supremely plausible. So do you, if you think about it. The stuff you've read, usually coming from a far-right perspective, but actually the left, especially since Jeremy Corbyn's successful leadership bit, the left has been going down equally bonkers rabbit holes as well. That is just true, isn't it? People now just sort of choose what the news is. Fits their agenda. Yeah, that's true. I believe it. Madeleine McCann somehow plays a role in the American presidential election precisely because we don't have a filter as a general public anymore. How do I have a conversation like this as a journalist without patronising huge swathes of people who've chosen to believe the nonsense they read on the internet? I used to say it began with climate change, I think, and then you had it with the MMR vaccine, probably most immediately frighteningly. It sort of spreads, and health plays a role in this story as well. The most popular article from conspiracy theorists notched up more than 530,000 views. That's not viral. Come on, we count ours in the millions now on this program. But anyway, 530,000 views is a lot. And that was just not true. The World Health Organization, which put out the most successful post, only got 43,000, so less than a tenth. And this was why the Zika virus is fraudulent medical hoax. A video alleging that the Zika virus, which can cause devastating damage to the brain of a developing fetus, is a conspiracy by the pharmaceutical and chemical industries to sell vaccines. And people buy this, people swallow it, people suck it up. And endanger their own lives and the lives of their children as a result. Then you segue it over into the political, and you can, or at least you begin to get an understanding of how far apart the world has apparently become. It's strange, really, to reflect upon British people who have been seduced by the Trumpian snake oil, but not that strange when you look at how many British people have also been seduced by British politicians peddling effectively racist lies under a sort of umbrella of, bonhomie and clubbability. How do you fix this? How do you unbreak journalism? How do you unbreak politics? I don't know if you can. I really don't. It's just the proliferation of outlets. Russia now runs completely bogus websites, completely bogus news stories. I get trolled by Russian trolls, Russian bots, paid people sitting in sort of offices in Russia, contributing to the comment sections of Western media. It's quite incredible how mad things have become. I'm not sure that it could have been any different. I'm not sure we could have controlled it. In the same way that pornography has become the defining content of the World Wide Web, so it will be that lies has become the internet's greatest legacy to the world of current affairs and news, lies and conspiracy theories. And here's the thing. So I do this thing, and I don't know if it's fair to suggest that people who are supportive or in any way impressed by Donald Trump never do this. But I can't imagine you spend a lot of time doing it. I do this thing, I try to imagine what it's like to be the other way around. I don't think I'd ever buy a bumper sticker featuring Hillary Clinton, necessarily. I can't pretend that she's ignited particular flames of fondness in my heart. But she just did some silly stuff, right? The worst thing she's accused of is potentially accepting donations to the Clinton Foundation while she was Secretary of State, Clinton Foundation being a sort of family charity, which actually gives a lot of money to charities, unlike Donald Trump. Washington Post has spent 6 months trying to find evidence of the tens of millions of pounds he claims he gives to charities. They found, as the Americans say, bupkis. So she did that, where you could email her foreign governments or foreign dignitaries, royal family members, that kind of thing, might be having private conversations with her about donations while she was Secretary of State. And that is bang out of order. And if there was any evidence that she had actually offered access or services in return for donations to the foundation, then the FBI would quite rightly have been all over her like a rash, except, of course, that they have been at the most unhelpful point imaginable in the presidential election, and they haven't found anything to prosecute. So that's out there. Then there was that thing when she said that she'd landed in Benghazi under fire. She'd said she was under fire, and the footage at the time suggested that proved that she wasn't. She had a relatively peaceable arrival in what was still a war zone, but not the little bit that she was in. And that's kind of like a lie. You know, there's no other word for it. An embellishment, an exaggeration if you're on her side, a barefaced lie if you're not. And she was married to a bit of an alley cat. Bill Clinton seemed to be one of those men who has enormous trouble keeping his trousers up. But these are not, if you like, secrets. These are all out there. So I've tried to get into my head how I could use those three things. Those are the three biggest, right? She was married to a bit of a dog. She, a dog as in hound dog. She used her private email server, a secretive server, in a way that was foolish and wrong, okay? And what was the other thing? And she lied about being under fire when she landed in Benghazi. Of course, she could have been under fire. I don't know until they get there when you fly into a war zone what the reception is going to be like, but she lied. And I've tried and tried and tried, and I'm still trying now, and we'll try together today, to understand how you could take those three things. Husband's a bit of an alley cat, lied about landing lied about the reception at an airport, and shouldn't have used a private email server. And I've tried to see how you could use those in any way. If you had some scales, you and I had some scales, right? And on one side, you've got those three things I've just mentioned. And then on the other side, you've got a 4 times bankrupt sociopath who boasts about sexually abusing women, has been accused of rape by a girl that was 12 or 13 at the time, still has a case to answer on that, has a huge fraud potentially around the corner with regard to Trump University, has boasted about using illegal immigrants, has effectively refused to publish his tax returns, boasted about how little tax he pays, while claiming that the ordinary American people are being ripped off by big businesses. He talks about outsourcing labor and companies that have put their labor overseas, and does it himself. Almost every single thing that he stands in front of crowds of people and says he will fix are things he does himself. To me, I said this a few times together, when you try to pinpoint those little milestones where you thought the wheels would come off the bandwagon, we were making a terrible mistake. We were employing the laws of logic. We were thinking, well, logically, when he has maligned a Gold Star family, Gold Star families are effectively the embodiment of patriotic fervor in America, the families of men and women that have given their lives in the service of America. Trump maligned them, suggested that the mother of a dead American soldier wasn't speaking at a public event because she was a Muslim. She had to explain afterwards it was because she found it too emotional. to talk about her dead son being publicly insulted by a man running for the office of President of the United States. So people, not just people like me, but people generally hear stuff like this and just sort of go, well, hang on a minute, you're comparing apples with oranges. These scales are stupid, James. How can you put all that on one side? How can you put lies and deceit and bankruptcy and sex abuse and all of the done by him, not by his husband or by his allies or by his advisors, just done by him? And then on the other, you've got a woman who used a private email server that she categorically shouldn't have used, fibbed about being under fire when she landed in Benghazi a few years ago, and was married to a man who was repeatedly unfaithful to her. And those are the scales that you've got. And of course, Facebook is under pressure to address fake news on its site after researchers found that misleading stories and conspiracy theories were far more likely to go viral than fact-based reporting. Because I've just given you fact-based reporting. And it's not very sexy. It's game over. Trump's finished. Why would you want fact-based reporting if you'd finally heard a voice suggesting that all your problems are due to Mexicans and migrants and foreigners and immigrants and Muslims? If you finally heard a voice saying out in public all of these things that you keep yourself warm at night by believing, you don't want facts. You want to find on your internet evidence that Hillary Clinton is actually a Satanist. I can't make jokes now. That's true. They are claiming that. That she's involved in a paedophile ring. They are claiming that. That her allies abducted Madeleine McCann. They actually are claiming that. And you sit here trying to work out what's going on. And I've suddenly realised this morning it's not complicated at all. It really isn't complicated at all. It's choosing, actively choosing to ignore fact-based reporting. Otherwise, there is no case for Donald Trump to be president of America. The only confusion we have now is how near half a country has chosen to live in an alternative reality of their own making. Half of the country, effectively, has chosen to live in the dark because they find the light so tough. That's what we'll try and unravel together today. 0345 6060 973. Let's look at those scales, okay? And let's just ask how a dodgy email server, an unfaithful husband, and a lie about landing in a war zone can, on any conceivable planet, be put on one side of a scale when on the other side you have multiple bankruptcy, boasting about being a sex abuser, commenting upon the sexual desirability of your own underage daughter, suggesting that when someone else's daughter is going up an escalator at the age of about 9, in a few years I'll be dating her. Just list after list after list, and then you look at the stuff that's sort of constitutionally dodgy, like the not paying tax, income tax, boasting about it, refusing to show you his tax returns by telling you how much he cares about you, lying about giving money to charity. I still can't, even with that little observation about choosing to believe lies, I can't quite grasp the level of self-delusion required to look the other way. I was going to do today, how many people do you think are holding their noses when they vote for Donald Trump? They're not, are they? They're not holding their noses. It is a really horrible conclusion to arrive at this. But if I give you, it's like we said yesterday about fascism, I give you a target for your unfocused fury. I tell you that the reason why you're sad or angry or poor or not doing as well as you hoped, or you're cross, whether you should be or not, here's the reason. It's that Mexican over there. It's those migrants over there. It's the bloody Muslims every time. I just keep whipping you up again and again and again. So you are not choosing to ignore facts if you like Donald Trump. That happened years ago. You're choosing to embrace hate. And there it is. It's that simple. You can't really hate Hillary Clinton. What's she done that's worthy of hatred? She's a career politician. Okay, well, don't buy her a Christmas card. But hate? You reserve hate for people who talk sexually about young children. That's Donald Trump. What's going on inside the mind of a Donald Trump voter? We just got back from Mars after a couple of years and we were looking at the American presidential election. Just explain the appeal of Donald Trump to me. Because it's impossible to unpin at the moment, except this decision to embrace hate. 0345 6060 973. Couple of clarifications. I'm told, I missed this, that the young lady who accused Donald Trump with one witness preparing to support her in court that he raped her when she was 12 or 13 years old has withdrawn her complaint after her identity went public and she was bombarded, predictably enough, with precisely the sort of death threats you'd expect from defenders of freedom in America. And apparently I kept saying Benghazi when I should have been saying Bosnia in the last 10 minutes of the show. It doesn't change the impact of what I was saying, but it does rather change the geography. It was in Bosnia that she claimed to have landed in the middle of a gunfight, whereas the reality was rather different. Paul is in Manchester. Paul, what's going on?
I think. Good morning, sir. Good morning, James. I think this Donald Trump is almost like a physical embodiment of people's inner demons. They're just channeling hate and resentment and the loss of the American dream, the unfulfilled ambitions, frustrations, the loss of their place in the world, and facts have got nothing to do with it. It's pure emotion.
But there are facts in the sense that some of what you've described is true. There is a loss of status. There is a loss of expectation.
Indeed.
We talked yesterday about people who were waiting for the American dream to come true, and it just doesn't for them anymore.
Well, I think the word used there is expectation. The problem with that is the future very often doesn't turn out the way people thought it would. I remember Stuart Lee, the comedian, saying that in one of his stand-up routines that we don't have a British dream because we're awake. I just think that the American dream was probably one of the worst things that's ever happened to the United States. But it was bound to end in tears.
You obviously, like me, sort of stare, waiting for stuff to begin to make sense. And this is one explanation, it's one analysis. But can you ever quite get into the mind of someone who has swallowed so much of this now that when something pops up on their timeline suggesting that Hillary Clinton's key advisors abducted Madeleine McCann with photographs comparing like Mao. I mean, can you even begin to imagine what's going on inside the head of those people?
No. I mean, I'm from the creative business, so you're trying to put yourself in somebody else's position.
Yes, exactly.
But this, I'm afraid, you have to abandon all notion of things like fact. And we've never lived in an age where there's as easy access to facts as there is now.
I know.
And it doesn't matter.
And yet they seem to be less fashionable than they've ever been in the history of humanity.
The interesting thing is that I feel like I've sort of failed as a failure of my imagination to try and understand how far I've gone with this. I mean, I get the thing. I'm from a working class background in Liverpool. I've seen a lot of people suffer. Not me, I've done okay, but a lot of people suffer through the Thatcher era and things like this. Yes. And I can understand the feeling that their life's going nowhere. I get that. But to embrace sort of some kind of mythology of... Is it because,
and do you think, you say embracing a mythology, is it because deep down they know it's not true, but it just gives them something to chew on? So deep down, if you live in the middle of the Dust Bowl areas of America and the factories shut, it's got nothing to do with Muslims. You've probably never met one.
No.
Have you? You've never met a Muslim. You've never met a Muslim. You've never met... I mean, the nearest you've ever come to encountering somebody from the Asian subcontinent is Apu on The Simpsons. And so you know that's not why. And you're a little bit cross that your wife's got a job and she might end up earning more money than you did, because that's not how things are meant to work out. But you can't really get angry with your wife because you've got to go home to her every night. So who am I going to get angry with? Who am I going to blame this on? Well, it's just dumb luck. It's history. It's fate. No, it's not. It's immigrants and Muslims. Yes, it's immigrants and Muslims. And then you just have to put the blinkers on and you have to go down the rabbit hole. And when you're far enough down the rabbit hole, it bleeps on your radar that Madeleine McCann got abducted by Hillary Clinton's speechwriters, and you're in too far by then. So you're going, hell yeah. Hell yeah!
Well, there's anything I keep thinking of is the expression displacement activity. It's displacing your own frustrations by ignoring the reality of things. But my own concern is my son studied history, and he was mentioning post World War I Germany, where there's similar sort of effects. I mean, I'm not making that comparison directly, but there are some worrying trends, and in the way that...
Well, the first thing they do is undermine the institutions, undermine the democratic institutions like the judiciary, just to hop across the Atlantic momentarily. The first thing you do if you're trying to tear the house down is undermine the democratic institutions, complain about judges, complain about judgments. Trump's gone further than that, though, hasn't he?
Oh, he's sending his people out to intimidate voters. He's talking about he'll only accept if he wins. I mean,
I wish we could punish people the old-fashioned way. I wish we could punish people the old-fashioned way. That's lynchings, right? That's strange fruit.
Yeah. To be honest with you, James, I'm completely flummoxed. And, you know,
I'm
I've
not.
worked hard all my life.
You're nicer than me. That's why you're flummoxed. You're nicer than me. You won't go where all the evidence leads you, which is that this is just epic bigotry and hatred on an industrial scale. It's the only possible explanation for it, because it's not about whether or not you weigh up the two candidates, is it? It's about how much weight you put on the criticism of each. So a woman who was married to an adulterer and who used an email server that she shouldn't have used and who claimed to be under fire when she landed in Bosnia but wasn't, versus a man who, I mean, where do you even begin? So if you're even contemplating the possibility that that's a difficult choice to make, you've already given up on truth. And I guess roughly half of America is giving up on truth because the reality is so hard to swallow. And that's something that politicians, whoever wins tomorrow, are going to have to address. And you address it in one of two ways. You either confront the cold, hard reality and legislate to improve it, or you do what the fascists do and attribute all of the coldness and hardness of reality to largely vulnerable minorities. Whether you're blaming the Dutch for the Great Fire of London, whether you're blaming the Jews for the economic situation in Germany in the 1930s, whether you're blaming immigrants for the fact that your wages haven't gone up in this country for the last 10 years, or whether you're blaming Muslims for the fact that you're not as rich as you thought you were going to be. That's what you do. You either address reality or you deny it. Trump denies reality. Hillary Clinton's failure thus far, I would suggest in this campaign, is that she hasn't actually offered up an alternative addressing of reality. She's just denying his denial. Paul, thank you. From Manchester to Warrington next. And this time tomorrow, Donald Trump could be president of the United States of America, despite the fact that he has absolutely no ability to tell the truth, despite the fact that his own team have now barred him from using Twitter because he can't control himself, while simultaneously campaigning for him to have access to the nuclear button. I mean, these are the things that us, I don't know, what are we today? You can't, I say libtards. Okay, these are the things that us libtards are troubled by. His own advisors won't let him on Twitter because he's, I nearly swore, employing the excrement of a bat. But that probably isn't the time or the place for that sort of language. So his own advisors, his own team, have taken him off Twitter because he can't control himself, while they simultaneously call for him to be the man with his finger on the nuclear button. Now I mean, how many times have we said that surely is the point at which everybody wakes up? But that is always like the mother of all wake-up calls. His own team, the people closest to him, the people who know him best, have taken him off Twitter. The same way that, you know, your mum might stop you drinking too much pop because you're going a bit crazy. They've taken him off Twitter, but they continue to campaign for him to be possessed of the power to start a nuclear war. And I don't know what we libtards do when confronted with that simple observation, because people who employ this weird word libtard, they think that's fine. So you might be sitting next to one now. You might be sitting next to someone now who thinks it's fine that a bloke who can't be trusted to control himself on Twitter should have his finger on the nuclear button. That's it, isn't it? We don't need to talk about the bankruptcies, the failure to publish his tax returns, the boasts about committing sex crimes, the lascivious comments about his own daughter, the lascivious comments about other people's young children, the sexual ambition he's expressed for girls barely out of single digits. You don't need to talk about any of that. You don't need to talk about the mafia links. You don't need to talk about the fraud. You don't need to talk about the illegal immigrants used to build Trump Tower itself. You don't need to talk about the fact that all the steel in all the joists in all the buildings he's ever built has come from China, while he's banging on about how important it is to do business in America. You don't need to talk about the fact that if you go out now and buy a Donald Trump baseball cap emblazoned with the logo of one of his golfing resorts, it will have a little ticket inside saying made in China. You don't need to talk about the fact that it's actually almost impossible to find recorded evidence of him telling the truth. The only thing you really need to talk about today is how anyone in the world, whether they're American or whether they're from Alpha Centauri, I'm including other worlds for the purpose of this analogy. Here's a man whose own advisors, his closest circle, won't let him on Twitter because he can't control himself. But it's fine for him to have his finger on the nuclear button. I don't know how you explain that, except to say, I've chosen to live in a parallel universe. I've chosen to live in a reality where the truth doesn't matter anymore. So it's fine to have a president who can't control himself on Twitter with his finger hovering over the nuclear. But that's absolutely fine, because he's the only guy that is standing up in public and saying that my life is rubbish because of immigrants. The only guy. Matt's in Warrington. Matt, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello, mate.
I'm watching on, to be honest, I've been watching on Bewilderment for quite some time, as a lot of people have. And I've just come back from the States for a works conference, which we do every year. And somebody with quite a lot of credibility and somebody who's very believable stepped up on stage. We had him as a guest speaker there, was Colin Powell, or as I like to call him, Colin. He was basically stating that, I mean, he's got, he's been sexy stage.
It's a terrible phone line, Matt. I don't know if you can do anything about it. Maybe just take the phone.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is that
that is actually a little better, but carry on. Colin Powell, or Colin as you like to call him, is up on the stage.
Correct. He was up on stage, and to be honest, he was captivating. He was absolutely fantastic speaker. He was approaching 80 years of age, and still absolutely on top of his game. But the thing that sort of rung home and rung true with what he was saying was that it's not just these two people who are going at each other that is wrong in this campaign. It's the whole of the fact that nobody can talk anymore without the world being against them. So Colin Powell publicly backed Hillary, and then had to close down his Facebook page because of the slurs and the racist, aggravated messages that he got on the back of it. And he said it's a sad state of affairs, and that the ability to talk.
Imagine what it was like for the woman who was due to accuse him of rape in a court when her name got into the hands of the people that would attack Colin Powell, his former Secretary of State.
Yeah. So I mean, absolutely. So it's. I just think that it's gone. The whole sort of politics on social media and going viral has just taken this whole thing into a farce, really, and all those kind of comments that you've made about the evidence that Donald Trump. You think the wheels are going to come off, and you think surely this time.
Yes.
Speaking to some of my colleagues over there, it was they couldn't see anything but Donald Trump. It's like, really, have you really got to that stage? It was more anybody but Hillary Clinton,
because she was married to an adulterer and lied about an event in Bosnia and used a private email server that she obviously shouldn't have used.
To be honest, they couldn't really give a sort of coherent argument against not voting for Hillary. It was more of they just hate that woman.
I don't believe them.
And I think, no, I don't.
I think that's the thing we've missed, isn't it? Yeah, they don't hate Hillary Clinton at all. That's just all that they can put out there publicly, because they can't really say, I'm a massive racist or I'm a massive sexist. I got no problem with Donald Trump grabbing people by the vagina. I got no problem with that at all, because I really don't like women much. And if I am a woman, I'm such a massive racist, I can forgive his misogyny, because his hatred of foreign people is so huge. I can forgive his hatred of women. I reckon he hates foreigners even more than he hates women, so I can forgive that. How can they ever come out and say that? So what can they come out and say? It's really important that Hillary Clinton used a private email server. It's outrageous. It's crooked. It's criminal. It's corrupt. That's it, isn't it?
Yeah. Nonsense.
Yeah,
it's absolutely nonsense. So,
Matt, keep fighting the good fight. 10:41 is the time, and I will draw you back again to that button if you don't like what Matt said or you don't like what I'm saying. How can you defend a man whose own closest advisors, the people who know him way better than you ever will, have taken him off Twitter because he's unhinged, but it's okay for him to have his finger hovering above the nuclear button? 0345. So actually, I should stop giving out the number. I'm already getting complaints about people who can't get through and me not talking to enough callers. I'll rattle on. Steve is in Oxford, and as soon as we've got some phone lines free, I'll remind you what the number is. Steve, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I just square a few circles in my head with yours. I've got a personal thing to say, and this is just, we've all got our own agendas. I have a problem with the media mentioning his bankruptcy.
Why?
Because I've been bankrupt. Richard Branson's been bankrupt. Most successful business people have been bankrupt. It's not a crime.
That's not true. Some people have been bankrupt, but not most successful business people. And I suppose, how many times have you been bankrupt?
30%. Once.
Okay.
Our business failed, unfortunately, and I've got back on my feet and I'm making money again.
I'm glad to hear that.
But I employ 20 people, and I used to employ 71 people. And, that's just a fact of life. So I don't think that's really a negative. It's just he's a business person.
Well, how much boasting do you do about what a good businessman you are? And how many countries? How many countries have you sought to lead?
I think I am quite a good businessman, but I don't have a problem with saying I was bankrupt and I made a mistake.
Well, he does.
Anyway, let me just come on to my main point. That's
well, hang on, just before you do, has he been declared bankrupt 4 or 6 times? Because I find it hard to pin that down.
I've only been declared bankrupt once.
No, we're talking about Donald Trump now.
Oh, I don't know. I think I've got no idea. I can't
because at what point
any American spends that.
I understand that you've been bankrupt and that it doesn't necessarily prove that you're going to be rubbish at business. And you're right. I think Richard Branson, some of his early businesses did go to the wall. But I just wonder what number you'd put on it. If it 2 bankruptcies, is that proof that someone's probably not what he's claiming to be? 3 bankruptcies, is that the point at which it becomes relevant to discussing his talent as a businessman? 4 bankruptcies, 5 bankruptcies. Just where do you put the number?
I just think they used a very interesting word there, relative. If I had 200 businesses and 6 of them had failed, my percentage failure rate was 3%. I wouldn't put that down as a disaster. If I only had 1 business and I'd failed 4 times, I'd think I ought to go and get a paper round. And
I don't know if I trust you with that. And why wouldn't you show me your tax returns if you're such a successful businessman?
No, let me come on to my main point now.
Okay.
I agree with you. He shouldn't. I'm not defending him, by the way, James.
All right.
That particular point. But let me come on to my main point. People do things in life because of the way they feel. Okay, you bought your house because of the way you felt about it. You bought your car because of the way you felt about it. We all act on feelings. That's what we do as human beings. That's our limbic brain. Our feeling brain is more powerful than our logical brain. That's a fact. What happens with Trump is, and what happens with Clinton is, I've got a theory that Clinton is like His Holiness, Mr. Blair. They are people that have been taught, a lot of politicians spend months and months being taught how to stand, which way to tilt their head, how to address somebody.
Saw that here as well. We saw that with George Osborne and Theresa May doing that weird thing at conference, didn't you? That kind of strange, yes.
So Trump, okay, is a big-headed man, obviously, and someone said to him, "Look, Donald, we need you to address people in this manner and that manner," and he said, "No, I won't. I'm going to do it my way." And I think that people feel, and I'm not a Trump supporter, let me say that again, but people feel good about the way he speaks. Oh, he's telling a few lies. Oh, but he feels like he's looking at the camera, and he feels like he's an ordinary guy, and he's saying it how it is.
But hang on a minute, because I think you're onto something, and I appreciate you keep saying you're not a Trump supporter. I know you're not. I mean, there's one phone line free now, actually, 0345 606 0973 if you are, and you can explain to me why someone who can't be trusted on Twitter can be trusted with a nuclear bomb. But here's the thing, I mean, you talk about feeling and saying it like it is. What you've described to me at the first glance is like production line politics, so they all stand the same and they get taught this and they all have style. But actually, what you've also described to me is what I would loosely describe as civilized behavior, not grabbing women by the vagina and boasting about it. Is that really what you think people in America are going, yeah, that's what life's really like? Finally, Donald Trump's got the guts to stand up and admit that grabbing women by the vagina when they don't want to be is acceptable behavior?
No, let me explain further.
Hang on, I haven't finished. I've got a bit more for you as well. And the idea that you can't sit down with your friends and say really racist stuff about Mexicans being rapists or about Muslims being disbarred from an entire country.
You're talking about facts.
No, I know.
And what I'm saying is that people, when they get wrapped up in feeling, ignore the facts. You know, we all do emotion. You in your life have done something when you're in an emotional state which is non-logical.
Oh, of course. Of course.
I just think what people are missing is there's a very strong relationship between feeling and how you act.
No, I don't think anyone's missing that. I'll tell you what the problem is. The people missing that are the people doing it. You and I can sit here and say these people are acting illogically. These people are letting their heart rule their head. These people are actually voting against their own interest. But they think they're using facts and that you're wrong.
Yeah, I know. But by saying the things that we're saying and discussing the facts, that isn't going to make a iota of difference for how they vote. They will vote for somebody who they feel is a good guy.
And why do they feel that? Because he's blaming immigrants for their problems.
No.
Why then?
No, the reason I think they feel it because of these production line politicians that but just turn up and all sound the same and stand the same and tilt their head in response to a question and lean back slightly so you think they're listening.
No, you're onto something. But does Barack Obama fit into that category?
Definitely.
Oh,
Barack
okay.
is superb orator.
See, I think he's one of the most natural speakers I've ever seen in action. I think he's completely real.
But I watch people, James, and I unfortunately one of my jobs was in sales and in marketing that I've done. I've done a lot about body language.
I get that, but if you want to look at Donald Trump's body language, then the most obvious comparison would actually be with the recorded footage of Benito Mussolini. So although I think you're onto something, you haven't nailed everything. Because when you see a ranting lunatic in front of you, his body language is usually what gives him away first. I guess people like you and I may never understand how anyone could cheer Benito Mussolini or Adolf Hitler any more than we'll understand how you could cheer their sort of weak modern counterparts. 10:48 is the time. It's like a sort of a weird Hollywood surreal story where the trolls have taken... Isn't there a film out about trolls? I think my youngest wants to go and see it. I'm just reading Prince Harry's statement, or the statement from Kensington Palace that has been issued on his behalf today. The past week has seen a line crossed. His girlfriend, Meghan Markle, has been subject to a wave of abuse and harassment. Some of this has been very public. The smear on the front page of a national newspaper, the racial undertones of comment pieces, and the outright sexism and racism of social media trolls and web article comments. Is there a story under the sun at the moment that doesn't boil down to that phrase there, the outright sexism and racism of social media trolls and web article comments? It's hard to imagine one, but it is a new world in which Kensington Palace would issue a statement like this. Katie Nicholl is a royal correspondent and author. She joins me on the line now because she's the expert and I'm not. But it's a while since I was on Fleet Street, Katie, but this is a pretty unprecedented intervention from a royal press office.
Yeah, hi James. No, it's not your absence from Fleet Street for a long time that's making you think this is unusual. It is unusual. It is certainly, in the time I've done this job as a reporter, which is a decade now, unprecedented for two reasons really. One, in issuing this statement, Kensington Palace are effectively confirming the relationship with Meghan Markle, which up until now has not been confirmed because no one has gone on the record saying anything. But secondly, it's opening up a can of worms because it is opening up details about his private life, which is exactly what he's trying to do, which is shut it down. So a bit of a dichotomy there, but clearly this rule has been issued on Harry's intention. No one will have told him to have done this. It's reading between the lines, and knowing Prince Harry the way I do, having covered his life for many years now, it's really the only way he can get a message out. He can't go onto Twitter and post a message like the rest of us can if he reads something about him that he doesn't like. He has to, suck it up and get on with it. But I think the fact that he has allowed his press officer to issue such a statement is a clear indication that this girl means enough to him.
Yes.
That he wants to protect her, and he clearly feels he hasn't been able to protect her. Possibly, he's worried that this is all going to scare her too much. He's spoken in the past about being lonely and about not being able to find the one, and that weighs heavily on him. Well, now he has found someone that he's really fallen for, and you can completely understand from a personal point of view why he is probably absolutely terrified.
It's rather poignant.
The relationship isn't going to be able to get off the ground because of the level of exposure and, yes, I think to a degree harassment. I think when you do read between some of the lines and the headlines, the shock horror that Prince Harry's dating someone with, a black mother, and all of this innuendo must be incredibly hard for him. But
he lists it. He lists the nightly legal battles to keep defamatory stories out of papers. He mentions her mother having to struggle past photographers in order to get to her own front door, reporters and photographers trying to gain illegal entry to her home, substantial bribes offered by papers to an ex-boyfriend, and the bombardment of nearly every friend, co-worker and loved one in her life. If you were ticking things off as a royal correspondent, Katie, you'd have done some of those things.
Oh, well, listen, I spent the whole of last week trying to find out more about this girl, trying to find out more about the relationship. When this story broke, it took everyone by storm. No one knew that he'd been secretly dating this girl. Very, very few people had actually heard of Meghan Markle. Well, I bet there's very few people on this planet who now do not know who Meghan Markle is and the TV show that she stars in. So, of course, any journalist worth their salt will not leave any stone unturned, and that will be going to her co-stars, going to
So
her
it won't
family.
work then? This plea from Prince Harry won't work?
Well, my feeling is this. If he really wants it to go away, then there's one or two things that he can do. You give the press what they want. So you make a statement, or you give an interview, or you issue a picture. You know, let's not forget, James, that for all the inches of newspaper articles that have been written over the last 7 days, there has not been one picture of them together. That is what... Fleet Street will not rest until they've got their picture of them together and they've got some words either out of Prince Harry or Meghan about the relationship. And once you've done that, once you've put that out in the public domain, you sate the public appetite to a degree.
Come on.
To a degree. I think to a degree you do. But of course, it is, again, that can of worms that's being opened, and, you know, will the public ever have enough? You know, if the newspapers are being bought and the magazines are being bought, it's because people are interested, people want to learn more about this relationship, and, you know, I suspect the public interest won't go away. But he's in a predicament, and, a big bit of me does feel sorry for him, because, you know, he wants to settle down. He wants to have what his brother's got. He wants to have a family and a wife and have children. And it's a difficult position. But actually, the fact that he's managed to have this secret relationship for the past few months does show that he does know how to keep things below the radar. The problem has been this tidal wave of interest in this girl who doesn't have palace protection.
No, of course.
You know, she doesn't have the support that he's got, and you've seen it with his past girlfriends, and it's why things with Cressida Bonus didn't work out. It's why his relationship with Chelsea Davy didn't work out, because they just couldn't handle that huge interest.
And that is, I suppose, why there's a sort of blend of hunger for more information and sympathy for his desire for you to all stop chasing it. He can't, of course, very briefly, Katie Nicholl, he can't control non-professional comment, can he? He can't do anything about people going online to be racist or sexist or both.
Well, I think, you know, Prince Harry and his girlfriend have found themselves in the same predicament that many other people do. There are trolls out there, and you know, the internet. This is the age we live in. For all the advantages of it, there are huge disadvantages as well. I'm afraid, you know. You're in the public eye. You're going to be loved and hated in equal measure, and, you know, you're going to get brickbats as well, I'm afraid.
Indeed you are. Katie Nicholl, many thanks indeed. Royal correspondent and author, commenting there on the very, very strange intervention, or now, thanks to Katie, rather more understandable intervention by Kensington Palace. Remember, of course, that Prince Harry and his brother both consider the intrusive press to be in large part responsible for the death of their mother. Rightly or wrongly, that is what they believe, and you know, they are her sons, so there must be a real sense within them both of horror when the newspapers start chasing and chomping at their private lives in the way that they saw their mother hounded for much of her adult life. Coming up to 11 o'clock, I don't know where that hour went. I can give you the phone line that Katie's just vacated, all right? Here's the thing. How can a man whose closest advisors don't trust him on Twitter be trusted with the nuclear codes? 2016 continues to plumb ever new depths of weirdness. Prince Harry now out as an anti-racism campaigner, anti-sexism campaigner, following the abuse that he's seen directed at his girlfriend in the mainstream media and on social media as well. Prince Andrew, in rare speaks sense shock, reported yesterday to have told a private dinner that there was a danger of Brexit ruining everything in Britain. I wonder how long it'll be before the chomping attack dogs of well-funded fascism turn on members of the royal family. Prince Andrew, quite an easy target. I wonder whether Prince Harry could somehow come into the crosswires of those people claiming to be patriotic while attacking for the prince for hating racists. And that's kind of where the Western world is at the moment. It's a battle between people who are racist and people who aren't. And then the people who are racist break down into people who admit it, like Gus, who's just been in touch to tell me how excited he is about the prospect of a white nationalist being in the White House. I suppose you've got to give him credit for his honesty, and people who don't admit it. And they're the ones that obsess about the emails, right? That's the only way you can make sense of this. How can anybody honestly think that using a private email server, lying about landing in a war zone and being married to a serial adulterer is in any way comparable to the calumnies and crimes that Donald Trump not only stands accused of, but regularly confesses to? Answer, you can't compare the two. You can only pretend that you hate Hillary Clinton and she's, you know, almost as bad or just as bad or the lesser of. You can only pretend that if you're looking for camouflage for your own bigotries. It's the only logical explanation. And as earlier callers reminded us, logic has no place in this argument. I suppose there is one other school of thought, which would simply be Chaos. I love chaos. Journalists tend to love chaos because it keeps us very, very busy. Chaos is preferable to the status quo, especially when the status quo doesn't really throw up any fireworks for us all to look at and, of course, in my business, get paid to describe. So chaos, I get that, but that's deeply irresponsible, isn't it? 5 minutes after 11 is the time. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. David is in Ladbroke Grove. David, what would you like to say?
Well, James, for once, I think I'm going to have to disagree with you somewhat, but I want you to bear with me.
Well, hang on.
Trump,
Don't take too long. Go on.
Trump will be good for democracy, just as Brexit was good for democracy here. He would never, in a million years, get a wall built between America and Mexico if he was to get into power, because he'd have to go through the Senate and the House of Congress and so on and so forth. If you take Obama, when he first got into office, he said he'd shut Guantanamo Bay. He was given the Nobel Peace Prize, and he still hasn't shut Guantanamo Bay. So to think that Trump could ever do half of the insane things he's saying...
but we're talking about the people who believe that he will, aren't we?
Yes, but what
we're not talking about people going, there's no way he's going to do all these crazy things, I'm going to vote for him anyway because he's different from all the others. We're talking today, we're trying to get inside the minds of people who don't just think he will build a wall, they want him to, who don't just think that he will ban all Muslims from the country, they want him to, who don't just think that...
Yes, but that's the great thing. That's the great thing, because all those questions for those idiots will be answered through democracy. They will find out that they can't do those things. The American
march on the
government will come
courts.
to an arrangement with Trump to get the border controlled by better guards. The customs will change. They won't let him go anywhere near the nuclear button because they wouldn't let him near the curtain control. He won't.
No, that's not true. That's not true. He is the only person on the planet that can activate America's nuclear option if he wins. He needs a Secretary of State of Defense to agree with him, but have a look at how Donald Trump operates. How hard do you think it would be for him to find a Secretary of State of Defense who just says how high when Donald barks jump? That's it.
Well,
he just needs those two people.
But what's the alternative? The alternative is the lying, same establishment. Bill Clinton was a friend of Tony Blair's. It's the lying establishment that Hillary Clinton has said she wants to have a no-fly zone over Syria. She wants to create wars. Trump would ask the question first through some stupid question.
David, there already is a war in Syria. How can she create it?
No, I know, but she could escalate it rather than deflate it.
Rather than just leave it up to Vladimir Putin to do whatever he wants.
Say again? Sorry?
Rather than just leave Vladimir Putin free to do whatever he wants.
Well, no, but then Trump would ask the questions.
Yes, but...
You know, he would ask the questions and have to go
What questions would he ask?
All the controls anyway.
What questions would he ask?
Well, he was asking the question, are Russia entitled to have, that place next to Ukraine? He may ask stupid questions, but he wouldn't get anywhere without the Democrats.
That's the Ukraine he said Vladimir Putin hadn't in any way invaded.
Well, that's just dumb.
Hang on. That's the guy you want in charge. That's the guy you think people should vote for. But this is what always happens, David. I appreciate the attraction of some of the sort of neat encapsulations that you provide. Why shouldn't he ask this? And we need this. Hillary will start wars. I can see they look good on banners. But when I point out to you that the man you're putting your trust in, you describe his followers as bonkers and his understanding of foreign affairs as insane, I do think that you kind of lose the argument at that point. I get the chaos theory, I really do, and I understand. And I know David used to call me a lot. He's a very passionate and very, very full of integrity and his anti-war feelings and his fury at the way in which Tony Blair led us into war. And he's right to point out that Clintons have an association with that period of history and that school of politics. But it's a bit like saying, well, I've got a really bad cold, and there's no earthly way I want to get another cold. I'd much rather have smallpox. Howard is in Radlett. Howard, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, good morning, James. Great show. Just really wanted to say, okay, so I don't have a candidate that I'm gunning for here, but I think the American people are in a desperate situation. Desperate situations require desperate measures. We've seen what's happened with Brexit. You've got Donald Trump on one hand, who has no experience in the political system. He's a businessman. He said he's going to go in and bulldoze as many of these policies, so-called policies, as he can.
What policies?
Well, exactly. So, okay, I mean, we're talking about building walls, this and that. It's all crazy stuff. But what I'm saying to you is that people are not, the American people are not looking at this from a rational perspective. They can't. It's the motive, right?
But they think they are being rational. This is what I'm trying to get my head around today.
Well, but the problem is that you've, on one hand, in this crazy situation, you kind of almost need Clinton and Trump to work together. You've got Trump on one hand that's saying he's going to get through Congress, shake things up internally, look at the establishment, which he completely despises. So from the American people,
he doesn't despise it. There's a picture of him. I just saw photographs of him glad-handing Bill Clinton at his own wedding to Melania. Bill and Hillary were there. There's stuff on tape of him talking about how much he likes Hillary Clinton. He doesn't despise the establishment. All he does is love himself. That's everything with Donald Trump.
That was then. This is now, James.
Come off it. That was then. This is now. What's changed?
The fact of the change is that he's now in line for the White House.
He now has to say to his followers that he has a massive problem with the establishment, because lying demagogues throughout history have always targeted this meaningless, faceless phrase, the establishment, as the root of all the evil and all the ills in their supporters' lives. But you said yourself you don't gun for either candidate. You have to answer this question. The people that know him best don't believe he can be trusted on Twitter. How can they believe he can be trusted in the White House?
No, he can't be trusted, but what option do the American people have?
Well, between smallpox and flu.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, well, I choose flu. I don't even understand why that's mysterious. Shola is in Kingston. Shola, what would you like to say?
Hilarious.
Well, hardly. It's terrifying.
My daughter had a slumber party. It is actually...
Slumber party? I think you'll find we call them sleepovers in this country, madam.
Well, there was 9 girls, which is why I called it a slumber party.
Okay.
Sleepover. And believe it or not, these 9-10-year-olds started talking about politics and Donald Trump.
Gosh.
And how terrified they were that he was going to become president, and how they couldn't believe that people were voting for him.
How do you explain it to a 9-year-old then? Because I'm struggling to explain it to this 44-year-old, i.e. me.
Well, I suppose that's what I found. I just stood there just listening to them talk about it amongst themselves, and I didn't really get involved, so I just find it really interesting, that they're going, but he lies all the time, and he says horrible things about Mexicans, and he wants to ban Muslims, and he wants to build a wall. Who does that? This is 9-year-olds. So
and how do you calm them? You just leave them to it? You leave them having this appalling psychodrama where they're losing faith in humanity? It was supposed to be a sleepover. We watched Grease and that popcorn when I was a kid.
We watched Freaky Friday after that. But
oh, good. Good film, that.
So, yeah, it all came back. But I just thought, if 9-year-olds can get it, how come these other people can't get it? One of your callers before said something about people's inner fears. And I think that's probably what it is. They don't want to admit all the things that are going wrong and how, you've affected your own life. So it's the embodiment of that.
Or not. It's not. I think that's possibly something that we need to draw back from slightly, is your life is right. It might not be your fault that your life hasn't gone according to plan. It is actually bad luck. It is the ebb and flow of economy. It's certainly not the fault of immigrants, but it's also not fair to say it's your fault for being a redneck or for being lazy or whatever it may be. There is something to complain about. It's just the scapegoating that's so ugly.
Exactly. It is. It's terrible. But like I said, if 9-year-olds can see that.
If 9-year-olds can see that, why can't half of American adults, and including well over half of white American adults with no college degree, maybe those 9-year-olds are particularly well educated, maybe they've got their eyes open, or maybe they're not drowning in a sea of lies and nonsense. Because the other element of today's news that I find fascinating, and which isn't at first glance relevant to this, but at second glance it's as relevant can be, is the fact that Facebook is now under pressure to address fake news on its site after researchers found that, wait for it, misleading stories and conspiracy theories are far more likely to go viral than fact-based reporting. That's part of it, isn't it? And then you look at the Prince Harry story, complaining about all the racist and sexist trolls that have been pestering, and mainstream media joining in and in many ways enabling and encouraging them, abusing his new girlfriend. It's kind of like there is a theme. You can call it what you want, but it's not new. It's not alt-right or radical. It's ancient hatreds, ancient hatreds, always bubbling under the surface, waiting for the truly, I don't even know if they're always evil, these men. I really don't. They're just epic opportunists, narcissists and sociopaths who love themselves so much that they'd rather be on a podium presiding over a crumbling country than just be in the backgrounds and in the shadows. It's a bit like Brexit, as other callers have suggested, where you have this strange outlook where people would rather be saluting a British admiral upon the bridge of a sinking ship than actually be on the finest vessel ever to sail the seven seas with a multinational crew. I don't want any of that. I want to salute a British admiral on the bridge of a sinking ship. Why on earth would I want to be like, HMS Victory at the Battle of Trafalgar that had about 40 different nationalities on board? Yeah, that HMS Victory and that Battle of Trafalgar. But what's Brexit? I don't want different nationalities on board. I want to salute the British Admiral as we disappear beneath the waves. I bet 9-year-olds don't get that either. I think I did Hillary Clinton a disservice when I described her as flu. I just describe her as the sniffles. So you've got a choice between smallpox and the sniffles. If you really want to go down that kind of lesser of two evils route, which doesn't really make any sense at all, but if you really do, then you're looking at smallpox versus the sniffles. Which one would you rather have? Smallpox or the sniffles? Smallpox, say almost half of America. And as ever, with these sort of issues that some of us find so confusing, the less educated you are, the more likely you are to vote for smallpox. Saif is in Staines. Saif, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, gents. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Well, loud, not necessarily clear. Let's see how we get on.
As I was saying to your operator, seems like for him to be able to actually attract people to listen to him, he's got to spout lies and hatred. Now, pretty similar to the Brexit people, most of them voted. I mean, I'm not talking on their behalf, but a lot of them voted for immigration purposes and everything. Now that he spoke about...
But with Brexit, I mean, there is actually a perfectly cogent argument if you've been persuaded that the immigration policies we've been living under for the last decade have damaged the country, and, you've been persuaded of that successfully, then leaving the European Union is the only way that you can curtail the free movement of people. As we're going to discover, unfortunately, there aren't any countries in the world that are going to say, yeah, you can have our business while rejecting our people, but that is at least logical. I mean, building a massive wall or deporting people or banning Muslims from coming into the country, that's not on the same page as saying the only way to stop free movement of humans is to leave the European Union.
The most shocking is not that he builds a wall, he makes the Mexicans pay for it. I mean, a lot of nonsense that comes out of that guy's mouth, and people still believe that.
Why do they believe it? It's not a great phone line, so just this will be the final question. Why do they believe it? Why do they believe it?
Well, the same way they believe that Brexit would be great for them without justifying why it is great for them.
No, again, I don't know that that's fair on all my pro-Brexit friends. I do think there's a logic to the freedom of movement argument. Yeah, you're right. But well established what my views on that are. They're built almost entirely on exaggeration and propaganda. You actually look at the numbers concerned, then you got a problem. But who cares about the numbers if you're going online and looking at the Daily Express telling you that you're about to have 76 Romanians moving in at the bottom of the garden? You're bound to be a little bit frightened if you're built that way. And yeah, that parallel works. The ability to frighten people with stuff that is not true, that plays across both camps. But with Trump, it's just taken to such an astonishing degree. And it's been fascinating, academically speaking. I just wish I was studying a period of history rather than living in it. Zach's in Greenwich. Zach, what's going on?
Hi, James. I think with your intro, you hit the nail on the head in terms of my position. I'm a Muslim, and if I was eligible to vote in the elections, I would have voted for Trump.
But mate, if he gets in, you wouldn't be eligible to visit.
No, but listen, I want chaos in the marketplace. So, because, okay, you're going to identify with this position because you have to admit that the world at the moment isn't fair in terms of the balance of wealth, the distribution of wealth around the world.
Help me out with something. Help me out with something, because I do passionately believe that, and I bang on about it all the time, and I get called a lefty as an insult when I talk about the redistribution of wealth and the protection of the poor and the reintroduction of dignity in the workplace. That's lefty, right? But being anti-Trump is lefty as well. So how has this guy managed to sort of, what is it about him lying when he claims to care about people who aren't being well looked after by society?
Sorry, I'm not here to answer that question. Basically, I'm telling you why.
Unlucky. 24 after 11. Rupert's in Ladbroke Grove. Rupert, what would you like to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, like everyone who's been chipping in, I've been watching this from afar with a certain degree of horror. And overall, my feeling from early on was that it was a big shame that Bernie Sanders or someone else didn't get the nomination not because of any particular great love for him, but because the prospect of Clinton offering continuity in a time where people are fundamentally dissatisfied means that people who aren't the deplorables who you've been sort of scratching your head about this morning, are people who are in a middle ground are susceptible to go, yeah, but it's been getting progressively a little bit harder for me for 30
anything
years.
has to be better than this, or at least let's just roll the dice, because the status quo is and that's where the Brexit parallel comes in.
Exactly. There's that saying, the sort of repeating the same thing over and over, expecting different results, is madness. And I think a lot of people feel that that's a relatively sane saying. And yeah, unfortunately, it does lead to a Trump vote, which I'm not sure is all that sane.
No, but it's a vote for other. It's a vote for different. And although this is what is so confusing about all of these demagogues, is that they are all the things they profess to hate. They're billionaires, they're tax avoiders, in Britain they're public school and city boys, but they profess to hate all the things they are in order to curry favour with the people who feel that they've been victimised by them. And so what should Hillary have done? She should actually have addressed things like absence of industry in huge swathes. It would be like going into the middle of North Wales, wouldn't it? It'd be like going into the old coalfields in Britain and talking about what you're going to do to regenerate it, what you're going to do to revivify these areas. She hasn't offered up an alternative to the blame. She hasn't offered up a kind of vision.
No, and I think that it would have been extremely surprising and barely credible if she had, but she didn't even choose to sell herself on her strength, which is unarguably very determined, hardworking, and arguing, no, we can't go on a crazy course, but in terms of continuing on the course, I'm the best candidate you could possibly hope for, which is a credible argument. And the sort of, some people have said, not my words, but some said, they call her a bitch, she should, because obviously the woman thing and all that, they go there. She should have jumped on that and said, yeah, that's right, and I'm going to, kick some ass on behalf of America. Because that emotional argument would have worked better than her trying to be liked when it's not part of her skill to be liked.
It's history that's against us, isn't it? I think of the Daily Express, oddly, because they seem to be even more mad than some of the other better selling newspapers on these issues. And I know for a fact, because I used to work there in a different era, that the journalists on that newspaper haven't had a pay rise for years, genuinely for years. So cost of living has been going up, cost of property has been going up, and some of the people who have to churn out the copy to go with the clips of my radio show accusing me of this, that and the other, they're getting paid less in 2016 than I got paid when I joined the paper 20 years ago. And yet these are the journalists responsible for the idea that people aren't getting paid enough because of immigrants. Everyone says, just you wait till you get replaced by a Polish bloke who'll do the job for half the price. I look at people every day. I sit next to people at LBC every day who haven't had pay rises for years. I've got colleagues who'll come on the radio and talk about how awful it is that immigrants are driving down wages, who don't know that their own producers haven't had a pay rise for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. That's the madness. Yeah. If I said to you, I can tell you who's to blame for you not having a pay rise, it's that immigrant over there, you're going to believe me. If I say I can tell you who's to blame for you not having a pay rise, it's your boss. You're going to be too frightened to get cross about it.
But even if it were true, even if it were, and I personally don't really think it is, but even if it were true, if we could, prove beyond any reasonable doubt that immigration has caused depreciation of wages and it's been a real problem, the issue is then, well, the measures that you have to take to shut the door to the world and lock yourself in a sense as well, it is one which, even if those were the facts, it would be extremely difficult to do that morally, at least for a lot of people.
But it'd be incredibly easy morally for a lot of other people as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. But, at least true colours would be revealed.
True colours get revealed in all sorts of horrible ways. I guess you're right, though, actually, true colours. I feel a Cyndi Lauper moment coming on. It's about true colours, and that's what I mean by the split on the Trump side between those who are quite out about it, like the Ku Klux Klan, like my correspondent earlier who was celebrating the fact that he thinks Trump is a white nationalist. For the record, I don't. I think if Trump thought that he'd have got votes by standing up and pretending to be peace and love hippie. He'd have done that. He'd have gone on, so I'm the best hippie ever. You should see my hippie. I'm the best hippie that's ever been. I believe in peace. The kind of peace I believe in is the biggest peace and the best peace. Love, you want to talk about love? I am love. I'm Donald Love Trump. He'd have done that if he thought that was going to get him on prime time, and he thought that was going to kick up a media furore. He'd have claimed to be Muhammad Ali if he thought it was going to get him votes. But he saw the way the world worked, the world created by Fox News, essentially the country created by the cessation of fact-based reporting, and he slots into it quite beautifully. The true colours thing is next, and that's scary. However, the result goes later. 11:30 is the time. I got a few phone lines free now. If you want to get in touch, I'm carrying on for now. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Just trying to unravel it. Maybe I don't think we've wasted our time. I think probably for me, on a personal level, the lesson you need to learn is that some of these people are not. Well, no, it's how do you then look away from the bigotry and the vileness? That's the point. Even if you really do feel squeezed, you really do feel stuck at the back of the queue, I still don't know how. You always try to imagine it's you. So imagine, that you were really cross and unhappy and scared of the future because you don't know if you're going to be able to sustain the lifestyle that your family are currently enjoying, and you really don't like it, and it's not fair, and there's all this money going all the other places, and I'm not getting any of it, and there's all these. I can't see how I could ever be cross enough about that to think, oh, there's a guy who boasts about grabbing women by the vagina and wants to deport or ban Muslims from my country. I can't quite see how you'd ever make that crossover. Maybe it depends. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It depends where you start from, I suppose. And speaking of where you start from, Liz Truss is currently our Justice Secretary. You're probably aware of this, and she was expected to do her job this weekend and defend the independence of the judiciary when an awful lot of people who should know better, and even more who don't know better, were attacking the independence of the judiciary. So there was a meeting at which other MPs accused her of being too slow to give her support to judges. And the Times reports an eyewitness today, or someone who attended the meeting, as saying that she's told her department, she told MPs that she'd learnt her lesson, and that when the Supreme Court judgment gets handed down, they'll be on the front foot, whatever the result might be. And then there was a vocal exchange. This is a person who was at the meeting talking to the Times newspaper. This is incredible. Sometimes I think I'm going mad when I think I can see what I can see in front of me. It can't be what I think it is. Here it is. There was a vocal exchange on exactly what the role of the Lord Chancellor should be, one person who was at the meeting said. She claimed, Liz Truss claimed, that following the Constitutional Reform Act in 2005, it was actually the Lord Chief Justice whose job it was to defend the independence of judiciary in public. What follows now should make your hair fall out. But it's 2016, so you'll probably just shrug it off. So the Justice Secretary argued that following the Constitutional Reform Act in 2005, it was actually the Lord Chief Justice whose job it was to defend the independence of the judiciary in public, not the Secretary of State for Justice. And here it comes, all right, the kicker of all kickers. But it was pointed out to her that that would have been hard in this case, given that he was one of the judges. Susan is in Haringey. Susan, what would you like to say?
Girl, I think that's a wonderful story.
Isn't it incredible?
I think that illustrates what drives us all a bit mad at this time of year. I have been watching, obviously, and following very closely the election in the States, and my feeling is, and I have two nephews that have been unemployed at various times in their lives. So what I hear, I think a lot of the people, not all of them, a lot of them actually think that I don't care, I don't give anything, I don't get anything, I do my best, I work hard, I get nothing, and what do I see? I see the rich get richer, baseball players and football players that played an obscene amount of money, etc. So this guy comes along.
Who is one of them? He's one of them.
Yes, he is. Oh, he is. But he's also a failure. So I think, oh, well, he's a failure. He's not like others who have made millions and millions and millions. And he starts to allude to things that they think, all this Latino voting that's going on. There's more Latinos than white people. Oh, my God. And this goes on, and it builds up in them, and there's a variety of reasons. So they take this candidate who makes a joke out of actually a bad joke out of the whole system, our system, which is difficult anyway. And then they just stick with him because they have 30 years of bad press, which the media and the Republicans have been trying to put Hillary Clinton in jail for years. And they've spent millions. Have they done it? No. And it's not because they haven't tried. They have really tried.
It may be unfair to ask you to do this, but I can understand that kind of, it's almost an existential despair, isn't it? That probably doesn't admit of much logical analysis. But if you break it down into simple questions, you say, look, here's a guy whose closest advisors don't trust him on Twitter. How can you want him to have his finger above the nuclear button? What do they say to them? It's too big a question, that, isn't it? They're going to say, no, there's not going to be a nuclear war, Auntie Susan. There's not going to be a nuclear war. It's just Donald Trump. He's just some guy shooting the breeze.
And they don't follow. You know, when the excuses are made for him by his campaign manager, etc., when the media has spent over a year following him and giving him free publicity, and all of a sudden they've woken up to the fact that he actually may be president, and it's killing them, and now they're coming out so strongly for Hillary Clinton. It doesn't, you stand in the thing and you think, all these people are for Hillary Clinton.
I don't even see that. I mean, admittedly, I'm not American, but I can't believe the way the election has been covered. I would have thought, for me, the refusal to publish the tax returns would have been leading the news every night.
Exactly, and they don't do it.
I know.
So they don't do it. So he's let off here, he's let off there. They listen to Fox News because it's entertaining, and the other media doesn't do well either in this. And so for over a year, he's had free publicity with a big mouth, racist comments, homophobic comments, anti-Semitic allusions to all the bankers in New York. It's just appalling. I feel so despairing. And then you read what comes on Facebook sometimes.
Yes.
I'm astounded at the ignorance. If we want a democracy, we have to be informed. And if we're not informed, we're going to fall for the Boris Johnson, who makes these very glib, jokey things, to Nigel Farage, who is a one-trick pony, and then he goes off to support Donald Trump.
No, how dare you? No, how dare you? He would never do that after insisting that it's wrong for foreign politicians to interfere in elections in other countries. How dare you?
Yeah, and then he's going to get his speaking engagements. He's going to make a bit of money if he does his speaking engagements. I mean, but I don't understand. It's just despair-making. And when you get to that, you get the Brexiteers who are in despair, and they're going to vote for it. Get the hell out of the euro. They're not. Cameron could never have gone on the austerity track, which is true. Labour Party's in disarray. They don't have a serious thought. And Liz Truss comes out with saying, I defend the judiciary, and I'm just, walking down the street. And the people in the radio, and I'll be seeing often, will support, good causes, and also question when something is coming on. And when Liz Truss says, well, it has to, I'm not supposed to do it, it's supposed to be somebody else.
And you say he is one of the judges. You realise that actually you really are staring at a naked emperor, and you really are you feel clearly like the only person in the crowd, or the only person in your family that can see it. Speaking of money, Susan touched upon it. I got two Brexit-related reports for you. Philip Hammond has approximately £25 billion sized black hole now in his economic plans caused by that decision or the uncertainty surrounding the pound. That's only £25 billion, though. It doesn't matter. Should stick it on the side of a bus. And the other story I really thought you'd be amused by today is this one. It's a headline in the Daily Mail. And this to me, actually, I know every day it seems that we've happened upon something that sums stuff up, but this is lovely. It's almost as if you'd given me free rein to write a little story in the Daily Mail to prove just how mad everything has become. I'd have written it. I think I might have written this. Actually, I don't think my powers of satire are good enough to have done that. I'd have phoned one of my mates, one of my comedian pals, one of my lovey mates, to write the satire for me. So the headline is, another Brexit bonus. Okay, another Brexit bonus. You can see the size of it. I mean, it's tiny now. Well, in the early days after the referendum, they were putting all of page 3 over to the Brexit bonus and the moaners and Ramoners and gloom mongers. But now the Brexit bonus thing as an editorial gimmick has rather gone into abeyance. So this is today's Brexit bonus. Another Brexit bonus, ... Staff sickies slump. Here is the first paragraph of something that the Daily Mail is telling you today is good news. Brexit-related good news. This is what they've got. Once you've scraped the bottom of the barrel, what are you left with? Splinters, I suppose. In the context of news, these are the splinters from the bottom of a barrel that's been scraped clean. Growing fears over job security and Brexit have fueled a slump in sickies, with the average worker taking just 1.67 days off for illness this year, a study has revealed. You read down into it a little further, and it turns out... It turns out that 3 in 4 people, just over 73% of us, have admitted going to work despite feeling ill enough to stay at home because they're frightened about their job security and the economic situation created by Brexit. So today's scrapings from the bottom of the barrel are that sick people are going to work because they're scared. And that is a Brexit bonus. And I mean, it's the American election today. I presume you're aware of this. I don't know if you want to carry on with this conversation right up until 1 o'clock. We'll catch up with Theo Ashwood, who is, of course, pretending to be in America to cover the election while speaking to us from a bed-sitting room in Penge. We'll do that if you want. We'll sustain that illusion for a little bit longer. Ferrari's in Stoke Newington, actually, just with a big queue of people outside his travel lodge room with American accents. In fact, if you listen very carefully, you'll hear some people, the same person come around twice with a slightly different American accent. He'll go all East Coast, he'll go New York, and then he'll go right to the same fellow will come back to a Californian accent in the Voxpop. So we'll do that in the next hour. I'm joking. You know I'm joking. They are really in America. It's only Donald Trump supporters who might believe that they're sitting in a travel lodge in Penge, of course, worshipping Satan. And I would happily continue this conversation. I've got 3 phone lines free at the minute. I've been pretty much chocker since 10 o'clock this morning. 0345 60600973 is the number that you need. Or we can do what I would have done on any other day of this year, or at least on any normal day, and that is talk about Marks and Spencer's. You know I love talking about shops for a whole variety of reasons. Probably the most profound sounding of which is that it is one of the few things that we all absolutely have in common, whether you are a prince or a pauper. I suppose there's some incredibly rarefied existences that would never involve going into a shop, but the massive majority of us have a pretty similar relationship with shopping, regardless of how much you've actually got to spend. We all look at what things cost. We all look at what we like. We all have shops we like. So the high street, the furniture of the high street fascinates me and again, a move from profound to pompous. On a socio-cultural level, I find shopping really interesting. So that's coming up. It's up to you, okay? So we've got 10 minutes until 12 o'clock. Marks and Sparks or more American politics. You decide. Drop me a text, 84850, or tweet me. Actually, texts are better, to be honest. 84850 is the best way to get in touch. If you don't want to do that, you can email James at lbc.co.uk or tweet at Mr. James O.B. Story that really everyone should be focusing on today is the Justice Secretary not knowing that the Lord Chief Justice was one of the judges sitting at the High Court last week while claiming to angry MPs, suggesting that the job of a Justice Secretary would be to speak up for the independence of a judiciary, that it's the job of the Lord Chief Justice. A meeting at the House of Commons yesterday, someone had to point out to her that the Lord Chief Justice was actually one of the judges. Oh man, that's scary. But anyway, we're still laughing at America. David's in Guildford. It's not very funny though, David. What would you like to say?
Hi James. It's more about raising awareness and asking you and your listeners about how, as a society, we've become accepting of how the system works.
Yes.
Take for example how you've said it a number of times earlier this morning that you're getting the lesser of two evils. You're getting either, I think it was flu or smallpox.
Sniffles.
Well, sniffle.
Just to be clear, and I did say if you want to go down that road, I don't necessarily. Well, in fact, I don't think that that's a road to go down. But that's where a lot of people have gone. It's this idea that they're both awful, and so you're just voting on degrees of awfulness.
Yeah, indeed, and that's the point I want to come across with. And why are we accepting, or why are the American people accepting that they have to choose one of these two lesser evils? I know there's no actual constitutional process for them to go through another election because the two candidates are failures. Well, both of them are likely to be impeached at one point. We've seen already in this country that when democracy or referendum has been, solidified and the results are in, they're not always going to be the case. as we can see with the legislature saying,
Well, life is complicated, is what you're saying to me. And what Trump is offering, or possibly what some analysts are offering, is the notion that actually it's quite simple. It's simple solutions to complicated problems that never turn out to be true.
Well, yeah, I think that's a fair, very accurate assumption. But why are we allowing it? I mean, FDR is the only president, well, I can think of that had 3 terms. I'm not saying Obama should have 3 terms. I'm simply saying that there should be an interim period wherein they can find 2 candidates actually worthy of being the president, can be trusted.
Well, what is it for you? What are Hillary Clinton's gravest offences? Bearing in mind that I could probably talk, it's 11:53, I could talk uninterrupted right through till 1 o'clock listing Donald Trump's offences, and we'd barely have scratched the surface. What is it about Hillary Clinton that puts her, in your mind, even on the same page as this self-confessed sex offender, serial bankrupt and all-round creep?
Just to clarify, I don't think they're on the same page. Trump is by far the worst.
But when you're saying that they should have reset the whole election, you're putting her in a category closer to Donald Trump than, for example, Barack Obama.
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but when Hillary Clinton was interviewed by Trey Gowdy in the Benghazi trials, I would not have ever said that person should be a candidate for president because of the way she reacts, the way she holds herself, and the things that came out of it. I mean, just take the business intervention email, for example. She was asked if she could intervene in a personal business interaction that she was actually illicitly said not to have been allowed to speak to this person via the White House.
Yes, but this is my problem, is I'm familiar with most of this. You might be more familiar with it than I am, but I come back at this point and say, well, here's a guy whose wife was possibly an illegal immigrant when she first started working in America. There's a new one that's emerged in the last few days. A guy who boasts about grabbing women by the genitals, and it just seems to me that is like comparing apples with oranges. She is a career politician, and like most career politicians, the more you dig, the more you will find evidence of lack of perfection, right? But lack of perfection compared to, well, sort of criminal narcissism. That's the thing I just can't even begin to get my head around. And you sound more sensible than most of the people who've tried to explain it to me. I mean, the Benghazi interview, she was, self-serving and probably, I'm not corrupt, but certainly far from perfect. But to compare that to Donald Trump, it's like comparing Biff Tannen out of Back to the Future to Marty McFly's dad.
I'm really sorry, I've never seen Back to the Future.
Mate, well, there you go. There's a silver lining to your call today. But okay, but you take my point. It just seems to me that he is so ugly that to say, oh, and she's a typical politician. He's a typical sociopath. She's a typical politician. And you're trying to compare the two.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to compare the two. I'm trying to say that. I'm trying to say, in the sense that one's really bad and one's terrible. Yes, but what I'm trying to come across is that why are we accepting that these are the 2 people we are allowed to vote for? Why is there no third option?
Well, that's okay. Well, that's an interesting observation to make, but with respect, mate, not on election day. On election day, you talk about the election. You don't talk about the election that you wish you were having instead. But I don't mean to sound dismissive. I just, I've got fairly clear calendar-based decision about today's conversation. At some point in the future, we may well discuss. I don't think necessarily we will, because it's the American electoral system, but we'll certainly discuss elements of the question of how you end up in a mess like this. Amy is in Arundel. Amy, what would you like to say?
Well, I've got something I want to say, but before I do, can I cast your mind back over 20 years to what Trump did to a very good journalist called Selena Scott? Do you remember her?
I do.
I don't know what went on, because I'm not in those circles, but she was very, very good at what she did, and she gave him an interview that he didn't like, and before you know it, she's out of a job. Now, what was that about?
Nothing. That was not. I mean, off the top of my head, there was a seduction attempt. I think Selena Scott has spoken about this, and the interview. She's revealed the details of it, and she found him absolutely repellent. But she did not lose her job as a result of that. She carried on working at a very high level for some years afterwards. He then stalked her. For 20 years. So she profiled him for ITV back in 1995. If you just Google it, you'll find that something. There's plenty to find. She wrote for the Mail, I think. She profiled him in 1995. rejected his seduction attempts, and then he kind of stalked her and continued to bombard her with abuse for 20 years afterwards. So it's a good point to bring to the table, but he didn't he didn't pull any strings to curtail her career.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for. Fact-based reporting.
The other thing that I want to point out is the way he's been groomed to speak. His speech patterns are exactly the same as Winston Churchill's "We will fight them on the beaches." It kind of goes da 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 da. You know, it's like it's a done deal. And I think that's partly why he gets so many people, because this mesmeric, I'm already a president way of speaking, he's been trained to do that. And I also think that his duality, it's us and them, is completely linked to the moral majority fake Christian movement that was going on in the 80s and 90s. That was a good versus evil kind of, what would you call it, evangelical craziness. That Trump actually has hooked into that kind of mentality and that kind of a voter.
And you can't argue against that, can you? This is the next big political development probably on both sides of the Atlantic. How do you argue with chomping liars without, in a way, this could pull back to Brexit. How do you argue with these people? How do you help these people who are believing loads and loads of lies? Well, let's do some of our own exaggerations and embellishments. Let's tell them that the economy is going to go off a cliff or whatever. Well, actually, it is. But you know what I mean. Some of the exaggerations and embellishments on the Remain side were almost like a desperate attempt to speak the language of lies and exaggeration by people who don't really mean it. You're never going to win that argument with people who do really mean it.
I can tell you how. This is from my teacher training.
Yes,
No, seriously.
No, seriously.
It was really useful. It was called transactional analysis communication theory, which means you take the heat out of what someone's saying and you reply with adult logic, right? This isn't what I told you researcher I was going to talk about.
No, that is all the time. That's all the time you've got. And it is a great point. And it does actually work up until a point, transactional analysis, or as I prefer to call it, just holding up a mirror really calmly and kindly so that people can see what they look like. The problem is that for everyone who thanks you for showing them the light, there are 10 others calling for you to be sacked. We will continue to canvass reaction or at least understanding of the Donald Trump phenomenon. It's an impossible conversation to have without upsetting people, because I guess if you are not persuaded by the idiocy and borderline evilness of Donald Trump, then you're going to be offended when you hear it laid out for you in such irresistible terms. I tell you, I'd say it again. His own team have taken him off Twitter because he can't control himself. But hey, nuclear buttons. Siobhan is in Boston, Massachusetts. Siobhan, what would you like to say?
Oh, God, I'm so nervous about this election. Voting just opened over here at 7 o'clock. So I'm going to get dressed and then head out and vote for Hillary Clinton.
So I think you should get dressed before phoning me in future, Siobhan.
Well, I didn't plan it, did I? I wasn't thinking it through.
It's details. Why are you scared? Just because you think it could go the other way?
Yeah, I think she'll have a really comfortable win, but this election has been so volatile and it's broken every rule that you just don't know. And I've sat here and I've watched the Dow on a 9-day losing streak. I've spoken to my husband about, possibly losing the healthcare we have because of Trump's healthcare policy. And there's too much at stake to let him get in.
Well, I don't think anyone... Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you when you say that, but you're closer to the action than I am. So you sense my blend of despair and bafflement at how things that seem so obvious and self-evident are being denied by so many. What's your explanation for it? And we can begin with the simple kind of... how can someone who's been taken off Twitter by his own people be trusted with the nuclear codes? What would they say? How do the supporters square all the vileness and toxicity with the decision to still back him?
Well, that's the thing. I think with Trump, his base, they're not all the deplorables. There's different groups, but his hardcore followers, like he said, he could go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and wouldn't lose a vote.
He even says it himself, didn't he? You're absolutely right. He gets it. He gets it. It's all the support. I could go out and shoot someone and they'd still be cheering me.
And they absolutely would. He's not a politician to them. He's a cult leader. And they're not voters, they're cult followers.
And what is he selling them then? What is the Kool-Aid here? I mean, because I get the kind of, we can blame immigrants for everything, we can do this, we blame globalism, blame the free trade agreement, whatever it might be. But I can't, is it simply because I'm not desperate that I don't see the appeal of that Kool-Aid?
I think for some people that haven't seen a bounce back from the recession, that the rest of America has, the people working in coal mining, the steel industry, they genuinely believe that he's going to come into their town, reopen the steel mill. It's not going to happen. They think he's going to revitalise the coal industry. It's not going to happen. He hasn't done anything for America in 70 years. Why on earth is he going to start now?
And the more you need to believe it, the more you want to believe it, the easier it would be to believe, even if that is to the confusion.
They're desperate people. Yeah, they're economically desperate, and I get it, and you can see it happening. And they just believe every word he says, and they're pinning all their hopes on him. And then, of course, you've got the other group that hate Muslims, hate blacks, hate gays, hate everyone, and are falling for his unconstitutional policies, like the Muslim ban won't happen, it's unconstitutional. The Mexican wall, not going to happen. His tax plan will not get past Congress. But they don't fact check, and they don't look into policy debt, and they take him at his word.
And that I guess, is a question of how much you want it to be true. Siobhan, you presumably feel it would be inappropriate for me to shift the conversation onto the travails of Marks and Spencer's at this point in American history.
No, I just heard that. I was devastated when I heard about Marks, and I do remember my first sandwich. It was prawn cocktail.
Prawn cocktail? Wait, you're stealing my material. I was saving that up for the second excerpt from the history of the Marks and Spencer's food hall. Yes. Siobhan, take care and vote carefully. Keep in touch. Interesting to catch up. We stay in America, I think, to the other side of the political spectrum. Joe is in Houston, in Texas. Joe, what would you like to say?
Hey, James. Now, I'm on my way to work, and I got to tell you, I love you, but this morning, I couldn't take how you were bashing Trump. Yes, Trump has said a few things, and I'm black, and I voted for Trump. Yes, he said a few things, but do you know the difference? I know you were talking to another caller earlier. Do you know the difference between Trump and Clinton? Why people like Trump, really? Because unlike Clinton, who is a politician and panders to communities when it's election time, like coming into the black community when it's election and telling them there's no crime and that they shouldn't worry, everything is fine, while
she doesn't do that, Joe. She doesn't do that. She doesn't, Joe.
This is what I'm saying. The media would always try to make it look, unlike Trump,
yeah, but
he tells us what it is.
Which media?
You see,
have you seen the story? Have you seen what Donald Trump said about racism?
What did he say?
He said there is no such thing anymore.
Well,
he said if Black Lives Matter, then go back to Africa. We'll see how much they matter there. He said that to you, and you voted for him.
But wait, let's break this down. Okay, I love it. I love that you brought this up. Right?
Good.
If Black Lives Matter, then go back to Africa. Right? And this is exactly what we have a forum here that we were talking to a few black people from Africa and everywhere.
There's no such thing as racism anymore.
No, it's not like there's no other thing like racism. But
that's what he said. You voted for him.
The problem is, unlike other politicians who have had this same problem, black people have been the countries in Africa don't take care of their own people, of course. So when there are any type of
nor does America. That's the whole point of Trump's appeal, isn't it?
Yeah, because
America doesn't look after its own people either.
Trump is saying...
You didn't know about this, did you, Joe? When you didn't know he'd said that there's no such thing as racism, and if you think Black Lives Matter, you should go back to Africa. You didn't know that when you voted, did you?
But let me say this.
Hang on, I want you to answer my question. When you voted for him, you didn't know he'd said that, did you?
But it's true, though.
It's true that you should go back to Africa.
This is what we're fighting against, right? Is this. There's the difference with the.
John, I'm just going to insist that you. I'm just going to insist that you tell me whether or not you knew he'd said that when you voted for him.
No, I said I didn't know this, but that wouldn't have made any difference.
That's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. I know it doesn't make any difference.
That wouldn't have made any difference.
No, I know it wouldn't have made any difference. But shall I tell you why you didn't know that he'd said that before you voted for him?
Why?
The media.
Tell me. Okay.
That you choose to consult.
Let me get my point across.
Yeah, of course you must.
Let me get my point across. Most people. Let me tell you this, right? Most white people, when they're alone, they use the word that I probably wouldn't use on the radio station.
They don't, Joe.
Use it.
They don't. Maybe in Houston they do, but I can promise you, the more civilized the corner of the world that you're... No, I am a white person, and I spend a lot of time alone with other white people. I'm better qualified to tell you how we speak than you are.
Well, it's not the UK, all right? The culture in America is totally different from what it is.
So you think people in private talk in a really racist way, and you voted for a guy who said there's no racism anymore?
The fact that you use that word does not make you a racist.
Oh, okay.
This is why white people don't understand this thing. You know, the fact that you use that word doesn't make you racist.
Why don't they do it in public
then? All the time.
Why don't they do it in public?
This is the problem, because in their homes and the way they think and the way they do things, there's racism underlying every other thing. But the fact that you use that word racism, the fact that you use the word...
I didn't. Donald Trump did. He said there was no such thing. And you voted for him.
No.
Yes.
Trump is saying all lives matter. And the thing is, if black people could stop killing each other first, then all lives would make a difference.
I guess this works on the radio, doesn't it, Joe?
This what?
This works on the radio.
No, but you see, you're trying to make a point, and you're not letting me make the point that I'm trying to make. The point I'm just let me say this last thing before I go. The point that I'm trying to make is this, all right? Yeah. Unlike other politicians, Trump says it as it is. He says it as it is. And
he says there's no such thing as racism.
It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I'm black and I live fine. I don't commit crimes. I don't do anything that would make it would put me in danger. I wouldn't certainly go live in places like Chicago where it's predominantly black. I wouldn't go and live there. But you know, and politicians will come in and say there's nothing wrong in Chicago. But up to this point,
nobody ever says there's nothing wrong in Chicago. There are crime statistics. There are police reports. You can count it. There's absolutely no evidence at all for saying what you believe. I mean, I know. Yeah, hey, you voted for the guy. That's absolutely fine. But remember, if Black Lives Matter, then go back to Africa. And if you think you're safe from a racist because you don't do anything wrong, then just explain to me, Joe, how he's going to ban all Muslims from the country, even the ones who've never done anything wrong. So where do you derive your confidence?
Nah, I mean, come on, you know he's not going to ban Muslims.
So now you tell me, you ring me up to tell me that you support Donald Trump, but his first big political announcement was what, a lie or a joke? Come on. It's 12:15. It's probably my favourite tweet of the day. I'm not going to spoil it by clicking on the timeline and finding out what else is there. Hi, James. I really don't like a lot of what you say, but I know that you're right. How does that work? It means you've got a brain, mate. It means that as things stand, your bile duct hasn't overtaken your brain cells in the election, in the count. But thank you. I'll try and find a way of explaining myself that. Well, I can't. The truth is ugly. That's the point. The truth is ugly and complicated. Reality is complicated. Politics is incredibly difficult. There are no simple solutions to complicated questions, but the people that are wrong that you do like will pretend that there are. So you can make a wonderful career spouting nonsense from various podiums and platforms that just aren't true, but it keeps people warm, I suppose. The flames of their anger keep them warm at night. Back to the American election, the slightly less important topic that we're discussing in the final hour of the programme today. Neil is in... God, producer's gone transatlantic in the blink of an eye. He's in NYC, according to my screen. I'll go with the old money and just say New York City. Neil, what made you pick up the phone? What's going on?
James, good morning. I just wanted to tell you that I just voted, and it's going to be a very, very, I think, monumentous day over here. And the good news was that my polling station was full of people. So I think that's a real important point to get across, that people should vote. That's so
high turnout is democracy in action. Can you help us? I mean, you're an American citizen now, clearly, but you sound as if you spent a lot of time here.
I did. I've been here 30 years.
Okay.
So,
well, can you help us? When we say, here's a man whose closest advisors have taken him off Twitter because he can't be trusted on social media, but they still want him to have the nuclear codes. Can you explain that in a way that will make the clouds clear for your former compatriots?
Well, I think if you look back over probably the last 20 years, really since 9/11, I think that people have become very disillusioned with politicians. And we saw a third candidate a few elections ago, but it really didn't go anywhere. And I think that Trump's appeal is because he is so politically incorrect, he's so inept, he just doesn't seem to care what he says, who he offends. And I think people are attracted to that because everybody is very, very fed up with just the general politics. I mean, if you just look at what happened in the last 8 years under Obama, I mean, between the Congress and the Senate, nothing gets done. Because
it's not his fault, though. That's the fault of the Republican Senate.
It's not his fault at all. It's absolutely not his fault at all. But they act like children. I mean, it's just, it's tit for tat. Oh, we're going to shut the government down. No, we're going to do this. And I think people are just looking for, I know someone called in a few minutes ago saying, why are these the only two candidates? Well, I think if there's one good thing that might come out of this is you might get a third party. I think the Republican Party, as we know it, is done. I think it's absolutely finished. I just don't see how they can bring that whole party together after what Donald Trump's done.
No.
But I don't think the Democratic Party is. I think it's just a huge machine, and it's kind of just rolling along. And I think that's why Hillary will get in today. I think when it comes down to it, when people go to mark that X on the ballot, I just don't think that a rational independent voter, and I'm a registered independent, I think us independents are gonna swing this election in favour of Hillary.
Well, I'm not going to join you in your optimism at this stage because, 2016. But thank you, Neil. It's quite gratifying to know so many people are listening in America as well. If you work on the principle that for everyone who actually rings in, there's a goodly thousands listening but not ringing in, then they, hi, welcome. Neil, take care. 27 minutes after 12 is the time. Charles is in Croydon. Charles, what made you pick up the phone?
Hello, hi.
Hello.
How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks. What's on your mind?
Yeah, in fact, I'm so upset in my spirit. In fact, the major reason why I'm so upset in my spirit is regarding the previous caller that called you saying that he just voted for Trump.
Joe.
He's actually a black.
Joe in Houston, yes.
That's correct, yeah. Most of the time, I listen to most of my friends who tell me, oh, Trump. I wonder where these guys are coming from. It's so pathetic, to be honest. Most of them don't even understand they don't even have a full history about Trump. That they're just coming out saying things about Trump. You understand? How can a man tell you that black life doesn't matter? That if it matters, go back to Africa, and you still went there to vote for him? So apparently, they don't even have a clue. You are here, bombarding the media. Media have done that, media have done, but a lot of things that you know today is as a result of the media. And again, what's wrong with you people for crying out loud? This man does not understand what foreign policy is all about. He does not understand anything. All he keeps saying is, I will do this, I will do that, I will do that. How he's going to do it, no one knows how he's going to do it. I will. It doesn't make sense. He's a corrupt man. Who doesn't pay taxes. He's a corrupt man in all ramifications. Fair enough, and Clinton. I mean, Clinton is a politician. If you're much interested in following a politician and stuff like that, you dip so deep, you will definitely find out something about them. Nobody's perfect, apparently. Nobody's perfect. But this thing is...
No, she's worse than... she's done some... that's the problem, though, isn't it? Is that you feel, as a journalist, that you have to kind of try to give some equal weight to her offences, her alleged offences, compared to Donald Trump's, but you can't actually.
No, you can't. You can't. This is more like trying to weigh apple with orange. It doesn't work that way at all. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, these are clear different fruits. For God's sake, and
different fruits,
different vitamins.
Do you know how you might actually be able to sort of conflate an apple with an orange? You know, people that might not be able to tell a difference between an apple and an orange. I think people who don't have any taste buds. I guess that may be what we're describing here. But people whose taste buds are broken, their political taste buds are broken, except they're not, of course. Let me just glance at. Here you go. The call from the American black man showed you up for the intolerant, completely biased, left-wing fascist you are, constantly interrupting him so we couldn't hear his train of thought. You were petrified he might undo your childish Trump is racist nonsense. You really are quite pathetic. And the idea that Donald Trump has actually been busted for discriminating against minorities. It's on the record. He's on the record describing black people as lazy and simultaneously claim that there's no such thing as racism. But yep, you got me. You got me with my intolerant, completely biased left-wing fascism. It's not confined to America, people. It's 12:30. 12:39. Okay, back to the shallow end. Joseph is in Stamford Hill to talk about the American election. Joseph, what would you like to say?
What I would like to say, I know you're going to shut me down in a second or two.
Oh, do you know, I'm so tempted to do it now when people say that, but I'll give you a break. Go on, fill your boots.
An African, I have actually been listening for for 18 months.
Yes.
People are obsessed with Trump. They are forgetting that Obama promised a lot of things which hasn't happened.
Because of the Senate.
Many black Americans... No, let me speak, please. Many black Americans
you are speaking.
shot on the street. They are... he promised to shut down Guantanamo Bay, which has it. You guys, you don't even mention all these things.
It's
Why
been
are
mentioned
you-
twice already today, Joseph.
No. O'Brien, I listen to you. Listen, I haven't even missed a show just because I don't call it.
I promise you Guantanamo Bay has been mentioned twice today.
Listen, mentioning
I am listening.
Mentioning it is a very big difference.
But you just said you don't even mention it, and we
He
do.
promised to.
We do
But
mention
you're
it.
obsessed with the Trump. I know Trump doesn't help Africa. Obama is not going to help Africa. Hillary Clinton is not going to help Africa. How can she come and say she's going to help black Americans when she's been there 30 years? What has she done for those black Americans who are dying on the street every day?
Well, if you want me to explain to you why the experience of a black American in 2012 is better than it was 30 years ago, I probably don't have time, to be honest. But what Hillary Clinton's response...
James, you don't know. I heard you...
So you think the civil rights situation in America today... Joseph, mate, listen, I appreciate that you listen very closely every day, and I'm very grateful, and I hope you continue to do so. What do you think Hillary Clinton should...
Patronize people.
What do you think Hillary Clinton should have done? In terms of policies that she could have enacted as Secretary of State or as the wife of a president.
To do now?
That's not what I'm asking you. You're saying she hasn't done anything for 30 years. What should she have done differently?
She intervened in Libya. She was the Secretary of State.
Yeah, we're talking about the experience of black Americans. What could she have done to make it better?
You do not have a clue of the experience of black Americans. You do not, and you will never have one.
What should she have done differently, Joseph?
Joseph. I hear you. You are talking about, you are speaking for Muslims, you are speaking for blacks. You do not speak for black people.
What? I don't want to speak for black people. I just want to speak to you. What should she have done differently?
You do not.
Oh, man alive. I do not have a clue. Give me a clue. What should she have done differently?
Give you a clue. Listen.
I am.
I am married to an English woman who understands probably a lot
put
of
her
things
on
more
then.
than you do.
Put her on then.
Because you are on the radio.
Put her on then. She might be able to help me.
Just because you're on the radio, you want to shut everybody down. You want to speak to everybody. No.
I can't shut everybody down and speak to everybody. That would be impossible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What do you think about Marks and Spencer's? Edward's in Hampstead. Edward, what would you like to say? Underpants or the American election?
Oh, any'll do. Good afternoon.
Hello, Edward.
I'd like to say that it really isn't about Clinton or Trump, left or right. The essence, I think, is popularism, and it's a style of politics that pits the people against the establishment. And its rise is a warning sign that the status quo has failed. And you can compare America today with Corbyn, with Freedom Party in Germany, the Dutch chap, and the National Front in France, and so on. We get these politicians who promise, through their charisma, and what the people want to hear. And it's a warning sign, I feel, that since, if you like, the financial crisis, things have really only got worse.
And history supports your analysis. Some of the conflation, some of the comparisons probably are a little loose. So Geert Wilders, I think you're referring to.
If you look at the 20s and 30s, there are direct comparisons, but I agree with you. There are some marked differences. For example, thank goodness, none of today's populist leaders have the military behind them. Whereas in the 20s and 30s, of course, Mussolini and so on and so forth, they did. But the point is, what happens in the future, we can see it.
But how do you unpick it, though? How do you unpick the person who believes that Donald Trump is somehow telling the truth?
Education.
But then you sound like you're sneering, you see. That's what I say.
Well, I would put it a little more subtly in a conversation if I were debating with someone.
Yes.
But the bottom line is there is a huge amount of dissatisfaction in the West, and the people are angry,
and they're looking for any easy answer they can find.
Well, there's section, the cult of Corbyn or the whatever of Trump. It's popularism and it's dangerous.
I'm less spooked by Corbyn. The thing I find dangerous about Corbyn at the moment is the paucity of meaningful opposition to a government that today announced that it won't, after all, be putting ordinary workers or forcing businesses to put ordinary workers on the board, while the Trussell Trust announced they've put out 500,000 food parcels in the last 6 months. I think Corbyn supporters feel the grievances on behalf of others, a bit like Joseph accused me of doing. It's the sense Corbyn supporters aren't complaining about their own lot; they're complaining about abstract injustice, whereas Trump supporters really feel that they're the victims of the system or the status quo.
I fully agree. It's a tomato. The essence of it is that there is a significant proportion of voters here who are blinded by a mixture of old-fashioned Labour ideals. Labour or New Labour, or it's dead because it served its purpose, and admirably so, over the decades. It was critically important to have a Labour government, for example, after 1945 and later. But it's now served its purpose.
Do you really think so? In the sense of, what about things like Uber and Deliveroo and workers' rights being eroded?
A good old-fashioned Tory ideal is if you look after the people who work for you, your company succeeds.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with left. It's at the top of our conversation. I said it is not about left or right.
No, you did. It's about populism or popularism. And I'm late for the travel, Edward. It's the only reason I'm moving on. But you're absolutely right. And that, I guess, also explains why people who think lefty is an insult, when they apply it to people speaking up for workers, speaking up for the exploited or the oppressed or just the poorly paid, oh, you lefty, also use lefty as an insult when you criticise Trump, who is supposedly on a bandwagon to protect people who need. I guess no one wants to admit they need protecting. They just want a world in which the only reason things have gone wrong is because of really easily explainable, observable facts about others doing bad stuff. Edward, thank you. I'm late for the travel, as I said. It's 12:47. Breaking news. Scotland's top law officer is to apply to the Supreme Court to intervene against the UK government as it seeks to overturn a court ruling on the triggering of Brexit. That has been announced today by First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. But don't forget, there is some good Brexit news around. According to the Daily Mail today, who actually described this as a Brexit bonus, growing fears over job security and Brexit have fueled a slump in sickies, with the average worker now taking just 1.67 days off for illness this a year. So if you're looking for good news, you're looking for pluses, 3 in 4 British workers now head into work despite feeling too sick to work because they're so terrified about the economic situation and their own job security. Good times. 12:53 is the time. Theo Usherwood is on East Coast time, live from New York. Honestly, he's not in a travel lodge in Penge. He's really in New York. Theo, what's going on?
I am really in New York, outside a polling station in Midtown next to the Flatiron building. This morning they've been queuing up since 6 o'clock to vote. There have been queues out the door. I suspect a Democrat-leaning coffee company is offering free cups of coffee to persuade people to stay in line. I'm already becoming American, drop in the queue and vote. Here there is I think it's fair to say Hillary Clinton doesn't have overwhelming support, but the feeling is that in a Democrat city, they have to vote for her to stop Donald Trump. You might be asking who you're voting for?
Take a guess. Hillary Clinton.
Are you excited? You seem
extremely excited.
And what do you think this vote means, perhaps more than any other?
I think it's a vote for a democratic process, experience, and
hopefully the ability to break the logjam and get things done. I mean, Hillary has a huge record as a New York senator of working across the aisle, and there's no reason to believe she wouldn't do that.
Excited and a little frightened about the results.
You say frightened, worried about?
That Trump could potentially become president.
Who are you voting for today, sir?
Clinton.
Looking forward to it?
Yeah.
You don't sound too enthusiastic.
I mean, doing my duty. I'm happy to be doing that, but it's not like it's the most exciting thing in the world.
Are you worried about Trump?
We're all a bit nervous, I think, but like hopefully sounder heads will prevail.
Do you think America's more divided now at the end of the campaign than at the beginning?
Sadly, I think we just have to say yes. It's been a very difficult campaign, and I'm just super excited that it will be over today.
There seems a sense of relief in your voice.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Cheers. James, the process here, the actual physical process, is a little bit different to the UK. Voters go into a booth and then they are faced with a touch screen, and they have the chance then to vote for their preferred candidate. There are also the same rules. We have rules in the UK which prevent exit polls coming out before the polls close. It's a bit more relaxed here in the US, and we should have an indication by early afternoon, early evening, your time, about who's doing well and who's not doing so well, because of course the numbers will start to leak out.
When would people start celebrating, do you think? I appreciate 4 o'clock in the morning is the official answer, but given that you're there and taking, when do you think maybe people can breathe out or start cheering, whichever way it goes?
I think it will. I think we'll get a much clearer idea at around 10 p.m. our time. That's around 3 o'clock in the morning your time. We'll probably have a definite result. I don't think there's just going to be celebrations. I think there's going to be some unrest as well. This is a country that's been divided, as I spoke to you about yesterday, speaking to families out in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. This election has split. The split's gone right across the board, James. And I was out speaking to a politics professor yesterday who said that he thinks there could be a case that we may see, especially if Trump's elected in New York, we'll see riots almost immediately following the confirmation.
But by his supporters or his opponents?
His opponents.
Right. Well, it's an interesting. I mean, he's a political professor. I think the Brexit lesson, if anything, can possibly be the case that those who, the quotes, self-styled insurgents who win end up angrier than they were before. But we shall see. Watch this space. Thank you very much, Theo. I needed to curtail that quickly because Leslie and Bushy is here with some very important news. Leslie, what's going on?
I went into Marks and Spencer with a nice hefty gift voucher, and I wanted to buy a couple of tops.
Yes.
And all I could see was striped tops in green stripes, red stripes, yellow stripes, horizontal, vertical. I thought to myself, I could never wear that.
You're not a zebra.
So I was so disappointed that I asked to speak to the store manager to complain that I can't get my voucher. Got the store manager over. Took me 10 minutes. He kept me waiting about 10 minutes. I said, can you see anybody in this store wearing any of these clothes that you've got on your rails?
Great point.
He said to me, no, sir. So I said, well, I'd like to complain. What are you going to do about the complaint? He said, it's a bit too late. The buyer's been fired.
Now, the crucial question is, I don't want to keep Andrew Castle waiting. He's a very important man, you know, Leslie.
Well, fair enough.
What happened to
let him keep to his tennis.
What happened to the gift voucher?
I gave it to my wife so she can buy a bra with it. That's the best thing. At least someone gets satisfaction.
Well, depending on what sort of bra it was, Leslie, arguably you both might have got. No, let's just, we're out of time. Let's save all that for another day. That's it from me. We'll do it all again tomorrow morning from 10, by which point we'll know. Andrew Castle's next.